Hi, I'm Linda Quinlan.
I'm Keith Ghostland.
I'm Ann Charles. Welcome to All Things LGBTQ. We're taping on Tuesday, February 4th, and from Montpelier, Vermont, which we recognize as being unceded indigenous land. Take it away, Linda.
Well, I tried to find a couple of good stories in the face of an incredible week or two. It's not easy.
Is that all?
Yeah, really. It's only been like 10 days and already I'm overwhelmed. But these are sapphic moments at the Grammys.
Oh, great.
Ooh.
Cynthia Erivo performing.
Arrivo. Yeah.
Arrivo, all right.
Yes, I'm a huge fan.
Performing Fly Me to the Moon. St. Vincent casually revealing she has a wife and daughter. Chappelle Roan shouting out trans people on the red carpet. And also performing Pink Pony Queen.
One of my favorite songs.
Lativa cheerleading. Backstage, Lady Gaga shouting out trans people in her acceptance speech. Janelle Monáe calling out Nelly for performing at Trump's inaugural. And here's a picture.
Great.
Some of them. So that was good.
Yeah.
On to less good news. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention ordered government scientists to withdraw or pause the publication of all their papers set to appear in medical and scientific journals so that the Trump administration can review the material for forbidden terms such as gender, LGBTQ, pregnant person, and according to, this is quite shocking, Inside Medicine, a Substack published by Dr. Jeremy Faust, obtained an email the CDC's chief science officer sent to researchers instructing them to stop advancement of their manuscripts that are currently being revised, those that have already been accepted for publication. Researchers were told to remove any mention or reference to a list of terms. That list includes gender, transgender, pregnant people, and LGBTQ, transsexual, non-binary, assigned male at birth, assigned female at birth, biologically male, biologically female. Inside Medicine, citing the email as reported.
One of the publications that they ordered withheld was the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, which those of us in the middle of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, that is the weekly publication that the CDC puts out that identifies everything that has been reported within the disease community nationwide. So our concern about the avian flu, they're not reporting. We don't know where it's happening.
I have read that it's happening in Vermont.
And we don't know the prevalence.
And we won't know what diseases and things are running around out there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this is a not so good story, an interesting one. I don't know if people heard about this, but Amelia Perez, trans star Carla Sofia Gasol, reportedly broke down in tears and insisted she's not a racist. In an hour-long interview with CNN after a series of offensive tweets were discovered. Gasol, the first ever out trans actress to be nominated for an Academy Award for her role in Amelia Perez, was roundly criticized after a number of posts on Twitter resurfaced expressing anti-Islamic sentiment, as well as posts targeting George Floyd and the diversity at the Oscars. The 52-year-old has previously stated that she is deeply sorry for the now deleted tweets. In an interview with CNN on Saturday, she argued the tweets shouldn't define her.
Well, she also said something awful about lesbians, but I decided not to cover the story because, you know, she said she's sorry. I'll
Well-
forgive her.
People need to know.
Okay.
I'm not sure that, you say you're sorry before you get caught doesn't quite do it for me. But
After you get caught, you mean?
yeah,
Well,
doesn't quite do it for me.
forgive
but
and
okay.
forget. That's
Huh?
what I say. Forgive and forget.
Yeah, no.
Although Linda says I forgive, but I don't forget.
Yeah.
Remember, she has that Chelsea heritage.
Yeah.
And the Trump administration has ordered federal employees to remove pronouns from their emails. A move mildly attack on transgender workers and a broader attempt to erase LGBTQ plus people and their identities from government workplaces. The directive, which applies to agencies including the State Department, Department of Defense, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Department of Transportation, follows a series of executive orders targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion in their initiatives.
So if there's no pronouns, does that make us all non-binary?
Could be.
Could be. Well, I guess there's some good news from the recent election of Trump, if you can think of anything. Donald Trump is in office as president, already doing much damage to the LGBT plus community and others. And Republicans have a majority in both chambers of Congress, but there are more out LGBTQ plus people in elected office than ever before. And they're fighting for equality. At least 495 LGBTQ candidates won their races. Nearly half of the 1,017 known LGBTQ plus candidates, according to the LGBTQ Victory Fund, which backs up qualified and viable candidates for office. There has been a net gain of 107 out officials for a total of 1,389.
Wow.
I'll do this one story and then I'll move on to Keith.
Okay.
The Greater Houston LGBTQ Center of Commerce was forced to move the location of a major event on short notice because of Donald Trump's anti-DEI executive orders. The second annual Thrive Small Business Summit and Matchmaker event was scheduled to be held on Thursday at the Federal Reserve Bank of Houston. But the bank officials informed the chamber Monday night that the event could not be held there because of Trump's executive order directing federal agencies to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. So this was the LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce, which tends to be conservative.
You think?
Keith.
Okay, so the trivia question, and somebody just jumped right on it. I wonder who that could have been.
And it wasn't Ann.
No.
And as we follow up on the diversity, equity, and inclusion, this is Black History Month. It will not be erased. This was the first Black playwright and the youngest American to win a New York Critics Circle Award. And this was the giveaway. This was the first play written by an African American woman to be produced on Broadway. And they probably both saw it, so there we
I have seen it on TV,
and in the theater.
A Raisin in the Sun.
You're giving
You
hints.
gave away. Uh-oh.
Now people will Google it.
Oh, sorry.
So events, Rainbow Umbrella, the Women's Discussion Group. Do you have an upcoming topic?
We do. We're going to talk about women in the Black Panther Party.
Ooh. I'm going to wait for those notes. I read your notes all the time.
Good.
I love it. But you won't let me come to the group.
No, but many people write the notes now. We rotate them.
I love it. Book discussion group. What are you reading?
Safe keep
Okay. And you like it?
so far.
I loved it.
I always wait Rainbow Bridge, they're doing phenomenal things. And when we talk about the Vermont response to some of the executive orders, Rainbow Bridge is in the forefront, ensuring that our trans communities are not forgotten and services are provided. So Zach will put up their list of all of their activities. There's a couple things in particular I wanted to highlight. One is on Tuesday, February 11th at 5:30 at Quarry Kitchen in Barry. This is the Youth Open Mic Night. And they're encouraging people, come support our youth, have a great time, meet some new people. The other, and I'm inviting Linda to go with me, but she said she wouldn't be here, on Thursday, February 13th at 5 o'clock,
I would go if I was here.
the Bad Art Club. How could you turn that down? It's, come to Rainbow Bridge Community Center for some art for your heart. No experience, skill, or talent required. That could be us.
Yeah, that would definitely be me.
They're going to have materials available, but bring your project if you've got something you're working on. The other thing that this actually happens every Saturday now, and it's the Sisterhood Campfire at Leddy Park in Burlington. Women and genderqueer folks gather in a safe and inclusive space to build community through journaling, storytelling, gentle music, and stargazing.
Outside?
Yeah.
Why would you write your journal outside is what I was thinking.
Your hands would be
critical.
frozen.
Okay, but if
It's
this
kind of
is
cold out.
if this is something that happens every Saturday, it would happen through the summer as well. And I think there are maybe enclosures.
There must be,
Yeah,
because your hands would freeze trying to write a journal.
there will be if you expect to get Ann or Linda there. Just a reminder that Mosaic in Barry, the sexual violence program, they're doing a new group for BIPOC youth in central Vermont. Spread the word. If you're interested, please get on their site. The Savoy Theater on February 16th is the last in their 4-film series looking at, I'm blocking, Gaza and
The
the
Israel
response, the Israeli response, and this is sponsored by the Jewish Voice for Peace of Vermont and New Hampshire. On the 16th is Where Olive Trees Weep, a searing window into the struggles and resilience of the Palestinian people under Israeli occupation.
Now, may I add something?
Oh, absolutely.
Performances, it was sold out on Sunday and we couldn't get to go. But a rumor has started that they're going to re-show it at some point in the future for
Okay.
those of us who couldn't get in.
Okay, so
It's been wildly popular.
I'll keep looking because
Right.
we're on their distribution list and get notices. So, Rutland County Pride, they the same as Rainbow Bridge Community Center are doing incredible things on an ongoing basis. Their calendar is filled with activities. On Friday, February 28th, starting at 8 p.m., is the Fatal Attraction Drag Show. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Get ready to be seduced by the ultimate night of glamour, drama, and jaw-dropping entertainment. Get your tickets in advance.
All right, 'cause we don't wanna
limited seatings.
get-
And it's going to be at the Rutland Elks Lodge. So, they're going out into the community and getting support. And in association with it, the Department of Health is doing a free vaccination clinic, which is great.
Are they allowed to?
Probably.
This one time only before anybody really notices.
Although we've just publicized it. Sorry.
I didn't hear a thing. No, it's the Vermont Department of Health, so they can still get away with it.
Good.
On March 1st, 7 p.m. at Briggs Opera House, it is the Junction Dance Festival. This is Shake the Cabin Fever winter fundraiser. It's a dance company who is performing the Lavender Scare.
Oh,
And you're
a
encouraged.
dance company.
Yeah, it's the N Squared Dance Company, founded in 2014 by artistic directors Nick Nagel and Zachary Betty. Seeks to positively impact lives through dance by providing high-quality performances to the public.
Good.
When is this?
It's March 1st
Oh.
at Briggs Opera House.
Great.
So, and indeed, the Lavender Scare, the production is about, the Red Scare and then the Lavender component, where it was the LGBTQ communities that were targeted by the McCarthy era. So it should be great, and that's why we're You're already dressed for
I'm
it.
ready.
You're
Yeah.
ready for it. The other thing is, and I had skipped over it, but I'm going to go back, at the Catamount Center in Williston, they are doing on Sunday, the 16th, from 1 to 3 p.m., a Pride cross-country skiing group. 35 kilometers.
Wow.
We
That's
better
a
not
lot
make
of
sure
trip.
we don't get sold out of that yet.
Actually, registration is required because there's a limit on how many people to put on the trails at one time. So with that, get your skis ready.
All right. We'll see. I have some good news. In
Good.
fact, on balance, my news is good.
I'm shocked.
Here, here.
She skipped over the bad stuff.
Oh,
I took out a couple things, but on balance, this is really good news. And everybody, I in particular, report on all the anti-LGBTQ atrocities in Africa. The Uganda kill the gays bill, Kenya moving to the right, but let me interrupt that narrative with the fact that Ghana's parliament has passed a bill. The bill that was banning LGBTQ identity was just declared dead by Jonathan Mahama, the president. Let's look at a picture of him. In remarks to a delegation, and I'm going to report at length because this is such good news. In remarks to a delegation of bishops in Ghana, this country's new president, John Mahama, said a bill targeting LGBTQ plus Ghanaians and their allies was effectively dead. The Promotion of Proper Sexual Rights and Ghanaian Family Values Bill, first introduced in 2021, would impose a prison sentence of up to 3 years for Ghanaians who identified as LGBTQ plus, and up to 5 years for those who organized or funded LGBTQ plus advocacy groups, but it is dead. As far as I know, the bill did not get to the president, Mahama said, referring to his predecessor, Nana Akufo-Addo, who I don't think really supported it anyway. So the convention is that bills that are not assented to law before the expiration of the life of the parliament expire. So that bill effectively is dead. Mahama took office on January 7th after a landslide victory. He previously served as president from 2012 to 2017 and promised an economic and social reset with his election. I don't know what the promoters of this bill intend to do, but I think we should have a conversation about it again, he told the bishops. LGBTQ plus advocates in the West African nation welcomed the new president's declaration. While Mahatma may not be fully committed to a clear policy direction, his statement leaves open the possibility of a more balanced approach, one that allows for national conversation on sexual rights and without rushing for divisive legislation, the communications director for LGBTQ Rights Ghana told The Blade. His remarks to clerics attending the Ghana Catholic Bishops' Conference, in those he said, if we are teaching our values in schools, we wouldn't need to pass a bill to enforce family values. More than just passing the family values bill, we need to agree on a curriculum that instills these values in our children as they grow. So then fearful people said, yeah, but you can teach homophobic family values if you want to leave it to legislation. But the fact that he suggests education instead of criminal penalties represents a significant departure from the traditional legislative path championed by the bill's proponents. This shift implies a possible opening for dialogue and a more inclusive approach, one that recognizes the need for respect and understanding of diverse sexual identities throughout Ghanaian society. Another activist said that he believed Mahama is preaching tolerance for all Ghanaians, as opposed to say he was going to sneak in homophobia in education. Mahama is indirectly saying LGBT persons are not Ghana's problems. Let's teach family values that accept and respect everyone. Ghanaian values should be tolerance, respect, honesty, hardworking hospitality, and integrity. Those need to be taught, and not the hate, discrimination, barbarism, greediness, and hypocrisy that we're seeing in many leaders, which transcends into the young ones. Now, this president is a very interesting figure. He's a highly respected voice among African leaders and a longtime player on the world stage. He was a member of the Pan-African Parliament, the European and Pan-African Parliaments, Ad Hoc Committee on Cooperation, and the United Nations Development Program Advisory Committee on Conflict Resolutions in Ghana. He was a founding member of the Ghana AIDS Commission in 2016. I think that's revealing.
Until the Christians go over there and try to.
Well, bring it on, he seems to be saying, or maybe I'm overly optimistic. He's also a Gates Foundation Fellow and was a visiting scholar at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. His memoir, My First Coup d'etat, Memories from the Lost Decades of Africa, was published in 2012. Isn't that interesting?
That is very interesting, yes.
Okay, now we have a little jihad in South America. Let's start with the bad story and follow it by the resistance story. So Argentina's got a new president who's a real piece of work. He called all LGBTQ people pedophiles, but he's being sued. Argentine President Javier Milei took the international far right's war on woke to the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, last week in a fiery speech declaring the LGBTQ plus gender ideology constitutes plain and simple child abuse. They are pedophiles. The mental virus of woke ideology is the great epidemic of our time that must be cured, he said. This is the cancer we need to get rid of. Nice guy, huh? The attacks
What a sweetheart.
The attacks on LGBTQ people accompanied a restatement of Argentina's president's long-standing assaults on feminism, immigration, and the fight against climate change. Milei wrapped his far-right agenda in language cribbed from his fan and fellow warrior in the fight against woke, and we know who that is. We won't say his name. Initials DT. In response, Argentine Congressman Esteban Paulon, a longtime LGBTQ rights activist, filed a criminal complaint against the president, arguing Milei employed discourse that promotes negative stereotypes and encourages violence against the LGBTQ community. Milei radicalizes hate speech based on lies and fabricated truths. He raises harmful stereotypes against LGBTQ plus community members, which generates fear and anguish in our communities. He said, Representative Paulin said, families are living in fear as a result of his selective and unfounded claims. There are fathers and mothers afraid of being denounced for allowing their children to express their gender identity, and so forth. Following this speech, LGBTQ activists and human rights groups in Argentina organized a march under the banner for a country without hate. Now, let's take a look at the march that occurred on February 1st in the country's capital, Buenos Aires. Thousands of protesters took to the streets to condemn the controversial speech made by President Javier Milei. In his speech, he called feminism, identity politics, and the fight against climate change examples of sick wokeism, adding that In its most extreme versions, gender ideology constitutes pain and simple child abuse, which I already told you.
You're almost out of time if you want to
Let's look at a picture of the protesters clad in rainbow-colored flags bearing banners that read "Rights are not negotiable." During his tenure, Milei has abolished the Ministry of Women and launched a chainsaw plan to liberalize the economy and reduce workers' rights. But there's protest. He's a bad actor, but thousands of people are protesting.
Yes, good. All right. Thank you, Ann. That's very informative.
I have more good news to come.
Good.
We'll be waiting.
This is a good story. Lendale Johnson is living her life with no limits. The United States' first black and gay professional tennis player isn't letting her identity define her, even as it changes. After starring in her own reality show and competing in the ITF World Tennis Tour, Johnson is now focused on giving back to her community through private tennis clinics catering to underrepresented groups. And here's her picture. I used to keep a lot more track of tennis in the old days, but I don't so much anymore. DOJ Pride, the LGBT plus resource and support group for LGBTQ Department of Justice employees, notified its members the group had immediately ceased operations in response to President Donald Trump's flurry of executive orders targeting the community. NBC News reports, in this time of uncertainty and concern, we have taken the extraordinary measure of ceasing operations of DOJ Pride. DOJ Pride's board said in an email sent to its members on Tuesday, "We have made the decision in the interest and for the protection of all of our members." A DOJ employee who feared retaliation by the Trump administration for speaking out and wished to remain anonymous described recent events at the department as extraordinarily alarming. So.
We could be in Brazil.
And as anti-LGBTQ rhetoric and policies escalate under the newly reinstated Trump administration, New Jersey Democrat U.S. Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman is making it clear, this is a picture of her, that queer and trans people will not be erased. Recently, Watson Coleman introduced congressional resolution recognizing the critical work of LGBTQ plus advocacy organizations in the fight for equality. The Bayard Rustin Center for Social Justice in Princeton will host a press conference on Wednesday where the Congresswoman will also unveil a new formed LGBTQ plus advocacy board to guide her policy work. So we're fighting back where we can, so that's good.
Yep.
The former U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is reportedly considering a run for Michigan's U.S. Senate seat in 2026, following the surprise announcement that Democratic Senator Gary Peters will not seek a third term.
I'm working on my T-shirt already.
Do you think he moved to Michigan for this reason?
Should we move?
No, Pete.
Doesn't he started out in Indiana, but he must live there now.
Well, that's what I mean. Did he move there for? Well, anyway. All right, the Right Reverend Marianne Edgar. Is it Booty?
I think Buddy, that pastor who rebuked Trump.
Yeah.
Episcopal Bishop Bob Washington stepped into the national spotlight last week with a sermon delivered at a national prayer service in Washington. Last Tuesday, under the soaring Gothic arches of a historic cathedral, her voice resonated with a calm yet unyielding tone, calling for compassion and unity in the face of policies that have marginalized the LGBT community and immigrants. Her words were measured and deliberate. And if you saw the picture of that, you can see the sour faces
Yes.
of
in the audience.
everybody around her. So, Donald Trump order to freeze most foreign and aid funding will have devastating effect on the president's emergency program for AIDS relief, or is it PEPFAR?
PEPFAR.
Which helps fight HIV and AIDS internationally and has saved an estimated 26 million lives.
I thought you were going to talk about the statement of how many millions of dollars we were spending on condoms for Gaza.
Oh, yes, that was the other thing. That was like, and yes, we do send it, but it's for.
No, we don't.
We send some. I read that we
What are
send
you
some, but
talking
it's
about?
for to prevent AIDS, not for preventing children.
It's part of the HIV prevention program.
Right.
And it doesn't go to Gaza.
No, but it goes
to
other places.
It goes to South Africa.
Yeah.
In fact, Gaza is experiencing terrible crisis of not being able to get medication,
Exactly.
period, of any kind.
Yeah.
Michigan's hate crime law has been updated to include sexual orientation and gender identity after Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer. She is so good. Oh, I love her.
I know, and I read that Pete Buttigieg might have a run for his money against some of those powerful women who are thinking of
Well,
running
he
for
better
this
not.
seat.
Yeah. Signed several bills last week. House Bill 5400 and 5401 amended the definition and sentencing guidelines of the state's 1988 ethic intimidation statute to include sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, disability, and age, designing them as protected groups against the hate crimes if they are found to be motivating factors for violent behavior. Attorney General Dana Nessel, who is an out lesbian, said in a statement that it's incumbent upon those of us with the authority to denounce such sentiments. We have to, otherwise there's no stopping this behavior.
And she was mentioned as a possible opponent of Buttigieg in a primary.
Dana was?
Well, the Democrats will fight around among themselves and probably decide who they want, and it won't be the best candidate probably, but.
Oh, I don't know. I love the lineup they have now.
Yeah.
You know, the Gretchen Whitmer and her cabinet.
Yeah.
And Montana bill going through the Congress of Montana will charge transgender parents with child abuse.
It's Montana.
All right, let's see. Oh, this is just a good story. U.S. Representative Emily Randall, a Washington Democrat, is making bold statements against Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson's new bathroom policy, which bars transgender people from using Capitol facilities. However, she has one in her office building, her colorful sign which reads, "All gender restroom" below. It cheerfully explains, "All are welcome to use our restroom regardless of gender identity or expression, political ideology, or shoe size." The sign hangs beneath an embossed seal of the state of Washington, accompanied by the words, "Welcome, please come in." So we'll end on that upbeat note.
I like that. Okay, so I'm going to go back and forth a little bit between some of the executive orders on a federal level and what might be a Vermont response and what we're doing. First thing I want to say is, in people who have watched the public media, ICE is active in Vermont. Mayor Emma Mulvaney-Stanek in Burlington has acknowledged that ICE has been doing traffic stops and making arrests in Burlington. It is not the raids that everyone was expecting to see, but it's increased activity. In response, there is a bill in the legislature that would require legislative approval before entering into certain immigration agreements, so that the administration could not just, or the Vermont State Police could not enter into an agreement with ICE Homeland Security without legislative oversight and approval.
Do you think that'll pass?
We've already passed a version of it. This is just enhancing it. Another bill that will be going through, it is yet to be introduced, would prohibit our Department of Corrections from cooperating with ICE. And the impact for our communities is several years ago, hopefully people will remember, there was an incident where somebody had been taken into custody. Corrections took them to a court hearing. ICE was notified, and this openly gay migrant justice constituent was taken into custody because ICE knew when they would be leaving the court hearing. So we need to be attentive. There have been a flurry of executive orders targeting our youth. And one of the things that came out late yesterday is that the current regime has said to the soon-to-be defunct Department of Education that it is their interpretation that Title IX does not include or protect sexual orientation or gender identity. This is actually something that was anticipated because it was a Biden administration directive that it was included based on the Bostock decision that was Title VII. They just enlarged it, and legal scholars had told us that probably wasn't going to hold up. He's also issued an order, excuse me, about removing any reference to transgender within school curriculums. So what is happening here is that they've introduced a bill that talks about how Vermont schools will not be, that Vermont schools, individual school districts, can adopt their own policies and their own curriculum, that there will be a degree of autonomy. One of the most striking things is the ban on gender affirmation for minors. And in response to that, there is a bill has been introduced, and is before the House Committee on Healthcare, asking our Department of Health to start stockpiling medications the same as the state of New York has done for both gender affirmation, fertility treatment, abortion-related services. Because there are several concerns. One is that on the federal level, they will try to do a Hyde Amendment maneuver so that Medicaid money could not be used for gender affirmation. As part of the executive order, there is already a ban on using federal Medicaid dollars for minors, gender affirmation, transgender services. So our legislature is going to be talking about a bill that would require private insurance companies offering policies in Vermont to ensure that it is included. Because while the executive order might have oversight over federal funding, it has no oversight over the private industry.
Good.
The other piece that's going through our legislature right now, and the hearing is actually happening tomorrow, and is about affirmatory adoptions. And what this would do is, we did a major, parentage bill several years ago with the assistance of GLAAD out of Boston. This is to strengthen some of the language that if you have assisted technology for fertilization, that it accelerates the process so that both parties involved are listed on the birth certificate and have parental rights. Where that is significant is that other states are already moving to inhibit or prohibit some of that. But if you have a court order here in Vermont affirming your rights as a parent, the other state has to uphold that court order. You may not be granted parental rights in the other state, but that state has to acknowledge what has already been granted to you. The other piece we're looking at is, and I had mentioned it to Linda before we started taping, Idaho has a resolution that's already passed their House, will be taken up shortly by their Senate, that specifically asks the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn marriage equality. And the reporting said there are already 5 other states ready to do similar resolutions. Iowa, Kansas, Michigan, North Dakota, Montana.
Oh,
Did you
Sound
say
for-
Michigan?
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute, that's got to be wrong.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's got to be wrong.
I'm going to have to go back and double check on that.
All right, we should move over to Ann now for her last segments, if that's okay.
Oh.
I did hear, though, that the state of New York passed a bill saying that New York doctors could not be penalized for sending pregnancy or
Mifepristone.
yeah.
Yep.
to other states.
The whole-
So,
And really quickly, your hate crimes bill, Vermont is right now voting on expanding our hate crime enhancement so that it doesn't have to be against a specific individual. It could be against a protected class, such as a swastika on a synagogue. You don't have to have an individual. It is the targeted community.
Well, back to good news from
Thank you.
Let's take a look at Thailand, if we could. Thailand erupts in celebrations nationwide as same-sex couples start getting married. Hundreds of couples participated in a massive event at a shopping mall to tie the knot, and the Smarty Pants journalist wrote "tie the knot."
I know, I got that.
The new law granting same-sex couples in Thailand the right to marry went into effect on January 23rd, with thousands registering marriages across the country. In Bangkok, hundreds of couples turned out for a mass registration event in a luxury shopping mall in the capital city, decorated with an enormous pride carpet to mark the occasion. And I have two pictures before you of 2 couples who are celebrating this. In Bangkok, hundreds of couples turned out. The mass wedding, organized by a Thai rights group, saw couples 10 at a time presenting their documents to officials who legally recognized them as married. When the district officer was signing, I felt my tears brimming inside. We have fought for 2 years, but others have fought for 20 years, and today is a success, a live streamer and salesperson who goes by the name of Maple told NBC News. Equal marriage has truly become possible with the power of all. The Prime Minister, Sunetta Tavistin, who was on hand for the mass wedding and was premier when the landmark legislation was passed last year. This is what she said. 832 couples across the country registered marriages under the new law on Thursday. 23rd January is the day we will all mark in history that the rainbow flag has been planted in Thailand gracefully. The current Prime Minister posted to Instagram last week, "All of the love from all of the people is accepted legally with respect and dignity."
Well, we may have to go there when we leave the United States.
Thailand's law enshrining marriage equality was passed last year by Parliament and given royal assent by the king in September, and I remember reporting on that. Yep. It was years in the making as Thailand endured political strife, including a military coup in 2014. It made it extremely difficult for Parliament to move forward with this bill or to actually even have discussions related to gender justice, Parliament members said. The LGBTQ activist who just spoke credited a wave of youth pro-democracy protests in 2020 for reigniting the campaign for marriage equality that influenced political parties to campaign for LGBTQ plus related laws and policies because it became a landmark policy to gain the popular vote from the younger generation. Thailand on Thursday became the third country, as we know, in Asia, after Taiwan and Nepal, to legalize same-sex marriage. Singaporean Tom Tan said he hoped Thailand would be an example for other Asian nations. Same-sex marriage remains illegal in Singapore, although the government repealed the law criminalizing sex between men in 2022. I do feel things are moving, but obviously not as fast as in Thailand, he said. He and his partner, a Thai native, are super stoked and excited to wed in Thailand later this year, he said. So isn't that great?
Yeah.
And to follow it up, Thailand makes hormone therapy free for trans people just after legalizing marriage equality.
They're on a roll.
No kidding. Just days after the marriage equality became the law in Thailand, the country's National Health Ministry added hormone replacement therapy to free health care services available to Thai citizens. Now, let's go to Europe, where we have some interesting news. The number of children who think they are the wrong gender surges 50-fold in the UK. Sharp rise in girls suffering dysphoria with twice as many cases as boys, the study of the GP records in England shows.
Wow.
Now let's turn to a film which isn't really queer. It says there are queer characters, but I really want to see it. And I think you might be interested in it also.
It's not queer, but it has queer characters.
Right, and I saw it in the Gay and Lesbian Review Worldwide. It's set in New York. It's Fandango. Well, Pedro Almodovar did it, so he's Spanish, which is why I can include this in international news. But the film is one of his first in English, if not his first. It's set in New York. Everybody speaks English, including the U.S. stars, although I'm not sure where one of them is from. Swinton. Taylor Swinton. Remember her who did Boys Don't Cry?
Yes.
Tilda Swinton.
Yeah.
I don't think she's U.S.
Yes, she
Anyway.
is. I believe so.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, it's on Fandango, Cinepolis, and Apple TV. And the plot follows a relationship between two close friends, Swinton and Moore, Julia Moore, as the former faces the prospect of ending her life due to terminal illness. The film premiered on the 2nd of September 2024 at the Venice International Film Festival, where it was awarded the Golden Lion, the first for a Spanish film. So let's take a look at a clip from Pedro Almodovar's The Room Next Door.
The snow was falling faintly through the universe, and faintly falling on all the living and the dead.
I will not go out in mortifying anguish.
I don't know what to say.
I'm hoping you'll say yes.
Yes to what?
You're gonna need a lawyer.
No, this is an absolute secret.
I'll sleep with my door open, and the day that you find it closed is the day it's already happened.
I've completely lost faith in people doing the right thing.
I'm learning from her, and you should too. There are lots of ways to live inside a tragedy. Do you hear them? It's daytime. And you're alive.
Interesting.
I've seen clips. I definitely want to see
Yeah.
that.
I wish it were more
It's-
widely available.
yeah.
I guess we'll have to subscribe to Apple TV.
We get that 30-day free trial.
But you have to remember to
I know.
discontinue it.
I know.
I know. So now we have a little transphobic story from Scotland, unfortunately. A tribunal rules misgendering is not harassment after Sandy Peggy, a nurse, claimed she was forced to get changed in front of a trans woman who was a doctor. I know. A nurse can refer to a transgender doctor. She claims she was forced to change in front of at work as a man after legal victory. An employment judge rejected a National Health Service request to impose an order on Sandy Peggy, which would have prevented her from using male pronouns or terms to refer to Beth Upton, a doctor who identifies as a transgender woman. Despite the NHS's insisting that both sex and gender of Dr. Upton is female and that allowing misgendering would amount to unlawful harassment, the judge said forcing Ms. Peggy and her lawyers to use the terms they consider inaccurate would be unfair. Ms. Peggy believes that Dr. Upton is male and therefore should not have been been in female changing rooms in Victoria Hospital, Kilcaldy, where she says she encountered her on 3 occasions.
So this was a locker room situation.
Exactly.
Okay.
She's taking action against both the NHS and Dr. Upton personally in a case which could have wider implications for how easily trans women can access single-sex spaces, female single-sex spaces. The judge also said the tribunal itself should use neutral terms for Dr. Upton as standard practice, following claims that panel members referring to the medic as female could imply bias. However, the direction is not binding. The latest victory for Ms. Peggy, in advance of hearings getting underway, follows failed attempts by NHS to hold proceedings in secret to prevent Dr. Upton's identity being closed. So the whole thing is publicized against the wishes of the NHS and presumably Dr. Upton. The bar for harassment could be met if male pronouns are used gratuitously and offensively on a repeated basis during the trial. The health board has faced criticism for attempting to have the case held in secret and then to restrict what Ms. Peggy can say when giving evidence. The 10-day hearing is due to begin on February 3rd, yesterday. Creepy. I find that quite transphobic. But a last miserable story from Russia, which I'm counting as Europe, is that they're building an electronic registry of LGBTQ plus citizens. So all these people they arrest, they get their contact list, they get all kinds of contact lists from the bars they raid, and they're building a registry. But the effort is slowed down a little because Putin is so invested in his conflict with Ukraine that domestic matters are slipping a little bit. I have 3 interesting stories from Australia involving, 2. Queensland, a state of Australia, has halted hormone treatment for new trans patients under 18. So if they're still, the CEO of the Australian Professional Association for Trans Health said that for the small number of children who needed access to puberty blockers and hormones in Australia, treatment was essential and frequently life-saving. And so they're following the lead of the Cass report in the UK, which was pretty transphobic. And they had conducted a review in Queensland, which found no evidence that patients were hurried or coerced. There was one clinic they're targeting. So not to be Also, to get in the act, the Australian government now has announced a federal review into transgender affirming healthcare for young people. Although it said Queensland is out of order. They acted prematurely. That Queensland plan was not appropriate. Then in a territory in Australia, I learned many things. There are states and there are territories. The Northern Territory is calling to remove pride flags from hospitals, saying they're against policy. The long-standing Northern Territory government protocol is to fly the Australian, Northern Territory, and Aboriginal flags. It said after removing flags from 2 hospitals, but there's also an Aboriginal flag that they removed from another hospital, so it's kind of contradictory there. And finally...
Is this a conservative part of Australia?
Apparently, yes. And the health minister, the former deputy chief minister, labeled the action as hateful. I think the health minister should be focused on delivering better health outcomes for Territorians, not steering division in our community, because we need the space of health leadership that brings us together, not pulls us apart. So everybody isn't conservative there. And in my last...
I have a question for, oh, go ahead. I just wanted to ask Keith a question.
Well, let me just tell you, former New Zealand pro rugby player Campbell Joestone, who is on the left of this picture that you're looking at, marries his partner, Ben Thompson, and shares wedding pics. There they are. Good news.
Good, thank you, Ann.
What's your question?
Very informative. My question is, like, I heard that when states like Michigan or California or Vermont do these kind of policy initiatives, that funding will be held back from the federal government to aid these states. So, what do you think will happen with all of that?
I think our Attorney General is ready to bring suit against the federal government.
But he could still hold up, but they could still hold up essential money for, like, fixing the roads and, you know, schools and I know whatever else they contribute to.
It would need to be more targeted and more specific if there was an indication that Medicaid dollars were going to pay for gender affirmation. They could withhold the Medicaid funding. Infrastructure in bridges doesn't have anything to do with the DEI initiative on a federal level.
Well, unless you said, you know, well, Vermont will do a DEI support of giving contracts to people who...
Trivia question. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Hurry.
First black playwright, youngest American to win New York Critics Circle Award. First play on Broadway, African-American woman, and it was?
Lansbury.
Lorraine Hansberry. Resist.